Hey guys, this is Tommy from the Ravens Creek study, and we're looking at the arguments for the pre-tribulation rapture, and I'm asking the question of can they be answered? So the second argument is there are no passages in the Old or New Testament which specifically says that the church will go through the tribulation. Um, my answer is this. It depends entirely on how you read certain verses and passages, and not upon the absence of those verses and passages. I mean, let me put it this way. There's no verse anywhere in the Bible that says that there's human free will. Is that true? Well, what about verses where, like in Joshua, when it says, "Choose you this day whom you shall serve," which is only a reflection of what was said in Deuteronomy, "Choose you this day." Well, are they choosing or are they not choosing? Um, it depends entirely on how you read the Bible. If the way you read the Bible is that there is no free will, then those verses don't say what immediately it sounds like they say. You know what I'm saying? Uh, if the way that you read the Bible as a whole would say, well, the church is not mentioned in the tribulation, there's nowhere that it says that they would go through the tribulation, it doesn't matter if I show you any verses. You're going to say, no, 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 that's not the way it's supposed to be translated. So just like the problem mentioned where the church is not mentioned in Revelation 19 through 21, in the Old Testament, we aren't going to read about the church during the time of Jacob's trouble. Why? Because, quote, the church, it's not really anything. What is the church in the Old Testament? I mean, it comes from the Greek word ekklesia. The Greek word ekklesia didn't exist when the Old Testament was written. So, of course you're not going to see, quote, the church in the Old Testament. The definition of tribulation seems to be somewhat misunderstood as well. I don't think tribulation is what God does to the world. I think tribulation is what the world does to God's people. Therefore, Jesus tells us, you shall receive tribulation. Therefore, John writes in Revelation 1 that he is suffering tribulation just like all the saints. Therefore, Paul tells us to expect trials and tribulations. James tells us to rejoice in trials and tribulations. Why? Because tribulation is what the world does to the church. It's what the world does to God's people. It's the persecution we should expect. That if we're truly God's people, the principalities and powers hate us. Those who are bent on wickedness and devastation hate those who are peacemakers. It's as plain as that. Okay, so that's a different one. So, I mean, that's the answer. If tribulation is what the world does to God's people, then the, quote, Great Tribulation is the time when all the bars are let off, there is no restraint, and we just are going to have to either be overcome by the Antichrist or we overcome the Antichrist. How do we overcome? By the word of the Lamb, or by the word of our testimony, by the blood of the Lamb, and by not loving our lives even unto the death. So somehow, even in our dying, we overcome. I mean, this is the conundrum. This is the problem. This is what's confusing. Is it's completely opposite of everything we would expect. So, are there passages in the Old or the New Testament which specifically says that the church will go through the tribulation? I think so. They're just not going to be anything that pre-tribulationists would find to be satisfactory. It depends entirely on how you read the Bible. If you've already come in with the bias that there are none, well then no. It's that simple. But I think there are, such as Revelation 12:6. When you read the Greek, when you read the King James, which is the only English version that I know of that properly translated the Greek, that suggests the woman, who I think is Israel, will be persecuted, flee to the wilderness where God has prepared a place for her for 1,260 days, and the Greek says, and they will take care of her. Well, who are the they that's mentioned there? It's not Israel. Israel's the one who's fleeing to the they. I think that they that's mentioned there is the church. And this is why, at the end of chapter 12, at the end of Revelation 12, The whole point, when the serpent isn't able to devour the woman, he then turns and focuses upon, quote, her other offspring, which are those who obey God's command and hold to the testimony of Jesus, hold to the faith in Jesus. Well, who's that? That's the church. But of course, pre-tribulationists, they're not going to hear that. They're not going to believe that. So it's like arguing with a brick wall in this case. Anyway, that's my response to this one. Until next time, thanks for listening, and please comment below. What is your opinion? What are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think I have a point? What do you think? Until next time, grace to you in Christ.